Anna, what does this movie represent to you in your life at this current moment?
The Fits is really powerful for me. This is my directorial debut in the narrative form. And I co-wrote this with two other women who are my really close friends, my editor, Celia Davis, and my producer, Lisa Kirchhoff. And we made this entirely with grant support, and it's just been a real labor of love, both from us and from our crew, and from the Q Kids, our real collaborators on this process. So it's very special to kind of have it out with audiences and to be landing. And the message is really about, community, not conformity, and the fact that this was such a collaborative process. And that narrative is about how it was made, but also I think it's the story of the film. So it's really special for it to be connecting with audiences.
When you think about the positives that doing the Fits has brought to your life, can you name one more than others that really just stands out for you that you'll never forget?
I think the connection with the Q Kids. We cast 45 real teenage dancers in this film, and they're part of a dance team in Cincinnati called the Q Kids. And connecting with them, collaborating with them, really creating this film together. I could never forget it, but also I feel like we're entangled for the rest of our lives and have a real family in Cincinnati, and just excited about watching all of those girls grow and explore new things, and staying on the sidelines as a cheerleader for them as they kind of go forth. It's really exciting.
Any recommendations to other producers or directors on finding talent on YouTube? Because I believe that's where you initially discovered them.
Yeah, I found them on YouTube, but it was months of searching, really. And I also was doing some in-person scouting as well. I think it's just about trusting your gut and kind of allowing yourself to be surprised, really. Drill wasn't something that we were actively seeking. It was just a recommendation that came up through the YouTube, YouTube recommends. Yeah, and I think kind of being open and instead of narrowing your gaze, open it up and be willing to be surprised.
I think you mentioned that you saw in the main actress, which is a Royalty Hightower, who plays Tony. When you auditioned her, you saw something in her face that was the ability to listen?
Yeah.
I find that interesting. Why was that important for her character?
Royalty is an amazing listener. And she's not just listening to me as a director, she's also listening to her fellow performers and to herself. She seems to be always processing, always very active as a listener. And Tony is a really challenging part. In the script, we already knew she was going to be carrying almost every single frame of the film. And as an actor, I think we were really looking for someone who was able to reflect the world on her face and to dance with her face in a way. So the fact that she's engaged naturally as a person and really actively listening, I think was the first step to saying, yeah, I think she can be Tony. And she exceeded all expectation. She's just a generous collaborator and performer.
What were the conversations like on set with Royalty?
With Royalty?
Yeah.
We talked about a lot of things. A lot of it was very physical. I started wearing basically gym clothes to set every day because it was like, we would joke sometimes we were making a feature-length workout video. It was just so active. And we would do sprints, and we would chat, and we would do dance exercises to kind of get into character and start to embody these movements. But we were also talking about really subtle things like being in a daydream or being in a haze, or kind of what it was like to remember what she was thinking about, and playing around with very, lip placement, eye placement, because a lot of the time it's just her face in the frame. So it was all kind of micro expression coaching, and it was really fun. Yeah.
In terms of working with the camera, what did you guide Royalty on working with the camera?
With the camera, I think it was always telling her that small movements were okay. I think as a dancer, often your audience is very far away. So the movements that you're doing as a performer need to be bigger because someone in the back of an auditorium or the back of a gymnasium needs to be able to see those expressions. They're very big. And letting her know that the audience is only a few inches away. So you can everything we could make smaller and focused and more minute. And I think that that was something that we explored, kind of bringing down the performance and breaking it down into smaller beats.
I like how the undercurrent of the Fits is about how groups project identity on someone, and how Tony's able to kind of flow between these two worlds, maybe easily, maybe not so easily.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Because any young woman growing up in high school, or man for that matter,
Yeah.
can relate to all that.
Well, we made very kind of exaggerated gender spaces. There's like the boys' world and the girls' world, and it's really Tony's character who's able to permeate between those two spaces. And what we wanted to talk about, particularly in the beginning of the film, is how the context is part of the identity. So nothing about her changes. She just walks from one room to another, and she's seen very differently because the context of her body, the context of her identity shifts with what the group is reflecting on her. So we were playing around with a lot of those things about, how identity is reflected within the context of a group.
I like how you created a lot of suspense and some of these fearful moments, because any young woman going into like a locker room can remember I felt sick to my stomach
Same.
at points, like, oh my gosh, because it brought back memories of going there. And
I co-wrote, with two women, and we always were kind of sharing those stories and making Venn diagrams, saying what falls in the middle must be these kind of universal beats, and the locker room is one of them. I really remember that feeling of being like, I'm gonna have to get undressed in front of a group, and the fear and unfamiliarity of those moments. I think it's really about fear of yourself and fear of being seen, and I think they're particularly tied to fears of young women, but I assume that crosses the gender line, and just kind of really putting ourselves in the mind space of what it means to be 11, and 11 as a complex human being,
Right, and she was a very mature 11.
Yeah.
Even though she's so small in stature, you
Yeah.
could just see so much was going on in her eyes. How many pages was the script?
Our script is, pretty one-to-one in terms of screen time to minutes. So it was I think between 68, 75 pages, which is our runtime of the film too.
And so I know it was co-written between the three of you.
Yeah.
Did you each approach it in a different way, where you took the ideas home on a weekend and then brought together in a brainstorming?
We did a lot of the script work talking out loud in a room, and then I would return home and do the page work to kind of keep the voice of the page consistent. And then we would come and we would tear it apart and break it out. And then I would return and try to do that. And then we also, in the writing process, dialogue was really placeholder, because we wanted to invite the actors to be authors alongside us in the process. So they were able to rewrite all their own dialogue. And I spent about 6 weeks on location before we started shooting, where we were really workshopping the script and kind of getting to play and explore, and then putting that back on the page. So really continuing the writing process right up through filming.
So many filmmakers that we talk to see things that the audience does not, things that they get critical about. Was there anything that when you watch the film, even though the audience loves it, maybe you say, ooh, if I could change this, I think I would have been happier? Or do you feel a sense of completion?
I really do feel very at peace with the film. It still makes me cry, so I think that it's working. It's still working on me. Yeah, the end sequence, I get chills. I tear up pretty much every time I see it. So I feel like it's the film we set out to make, and it exceeds that in many ways for me. I think I'm still seeing things that probably audiences for the first time don't see, but they're things I love. I think that there's so many details that maybe take time to see, because there's so much movement happening, and I think that there's many layers there. So yeah, I feel good about it.
It's so hard to pull off a film that's just in one location,
Yeah.
which you do beautifully. I know you move around the
Yeah.
school, but it's pretty much a central location. Were there other films that you watched that had one location, and did you note certain things that you wanted to emulate?
Yeah, one of the big references for us was Hunger, Steve McQueen's first narrative feature, and kind of using the tension of claustrophobia and isolating the audience in those spaces was something that I think he did beautifully and poetically in that film. And then, yeah, there was also, you know, in that choice, there was also kind of a practical implication. It ultimately allowed us more hours of shooting because we weren't doing company moves, and the days were short already, so we wanted to just work with the actors. But the community center where we filmed, I feel like had a very lived-in, beautiful quality about it. And we, you know, my DP came on 2 weeks before. We did sun charts for every room. We really tried to emphasize what the beautiful things that we were seeing about that space in the film.
When you consider whether a movie needs to be made, what does filmmaking mean to you? What is that litmus test like for you? Because there's so many movies that could be made.
I know.
But
I think,
do they really need to be made?
Yeah, I think when we were thinking about The Fits and whether it needed to be made, for us, we think that films, I don't know, like personally as an artist, it's like, you know, I would wake up in the middle of the night, like thinking about it, you know, and it's just like something that wasn't going to go away until it was made. And so there's kind of like a direct kind of obsession driving factor that I think a lot of filmmakers probably would understand. But then in a larger context, yeah, just, you know, I think there's a pretty narrow focus for what does get made, and it's exciting, I think, to insert voices outside of that narrow focus. And if you can do that and connect to it, I think that's really important. But I think it's a much harder task to set out to do. For me, it was really just, yeah, I couldn't sleep if I didn't make it. So yeah.